guys, welcome to this week's episode of Toxic Crime Tuesdays. I have noticed that I've got quite a few subscribers recently, so I just want to say welcome. Thank you so much for subscribing. Welcome to the fam. My name is Shannon Green, and every single Tuesday I speak about a true crime case that has just inspired me to speak out and share with you all. This week's case is a heavily sensitive topic, and it is one that this whole case just infuriates me beyond belief, because it is a certain topic that is still very prevalent. It is still happening. As much as I think we are all progressing and we are becoming more aware of the diversity around us, and I think we are becoming more diverse, we're becoming more accepting, more liberal, and that's great, but we could still make such a huge change. There are still a lot of people who are very ignorant and need educating. So I hope this case, because this story frankly isn't spoken about enough. When I was trying to do all my research, I was trying to look for documentaries, and the documentaries I come across disgusted me, because this is about a transgender male, and this person was constantly referred to as a female, which is just wrong, because to me he was a male. He wanted to be referred to as a male, and that's where his legacy should be. So there's going to be a bit of a disclaimer with this one, because this story contains a hate crime. One of the most horrific hate crimes I think I've ever witnessed whilst doing my research. It is just horrific. It contains rape, brutality, homophobia, and a failure of the system. A transgender male moved to a new town in hopes of a new life, to be somewhere where his previous identity wasn't known. He wanted a new life where he could no longer be judged. And all those hopes diminished on December the 31st, 1993. Just before I get into the case, I just want to say that if, like me, you are a desktop detective and for some strange reason you like the sound of my voice, then please subscribe to my channel, join the fam, because I'm here for you guys every single Tuesday. So let's dive straight into the case. Like I said, this is an incredibly sensitive topic, and it's something that's quite triggering for me. Although I'm not part of the LGBTQ community, I am completely supportive of that community, and I consider myself like an ally to that community. I think it's ridiculous that there is even a community, because we're all the same, but we're all different in the same sense. To me, someone who is homosexual, again, I just want to say that if I don't get certain terms completely right and they may seem offensive, please don't think that I'm being insensitive. Please don't think that I'm being rude or disrespectful. It's due to more of a lack of knowledge, which I think we could all do with being more educated towards the terminology for the LGBTQ community. So please, if you are part of that community, please do not take what I'm saying, the certain words that I'm using, as offensive, because it's completely inadvertent. So I just wanted to put that out there just before I continue. So to me, someone who is homosexual is no different than someone who is straight. For example, if my son come up to me one day, like I actually saw a post that was so true, and you know, if my son ends up being straight, and I don't need like a big announcement, like no one needs a big announcement to be like, oh, by the way, mum, I'm straight. But I also don't think there needs to be a big announcement that you're gay either. I just, what is the difference? You love who you love. Love is love at the end of the day. And I will be as long as my son is happy, as long as that person is good for them and a good influence on him, it does not bother me whatsoever. I really don't care if he ends up dating a woman, if he ends up dating a man, if he dates someone from a different ethnicity, different race. I really don't care. As long as that person is a good person, does not bother me in the slightest, and that everyone should be of the same opinion. I remember seeing a post where this woman said that if her son ever was gay and he wanted, well, she said like she would never want him to come up to her and give like this big announcement and say, "Mum, I'm gay," and she certainly wouldn't want him to feel any kind of anxiety or worry about announcing it to her. She would simply just want him to just turn up one day with his boyfriend, and she would treat it exactly the same as if he just got a new girlfriend. And that's exactly how it should be, and that is how I would be with my son. I wouldn't want it to be like a big huge announcement. I wouldn't want him to sit up all night worrying and overthinking and thinking, I'm gonna have to tell my mum I'm gay, how's she gonna take this, how's she gonna think about this. I don't want that. I don't want him to ever have that kind of anxiety and worry about my judgment, because I am never going to judge him for his sexual orientation, for who he loves. It really does not faze me whatsoever. I would just want him to just turn up one day with his boyfriend and just be like, "Hey mum, this is so-and-so, he's coming around for dinner." And just be like, "Okay, that's great. Just continue with the day, have dinner, whatever." That's that. It doesn't need to be this big, huge deal, because it's not a big, huge deal at all. You love who you love, and that's great. So, I'm sorry for my rant. It's just, like I said, it's a subject that really does get to me. It really upsets me. So, yeah, I'm sorry for going on a bit of a tangent. I probably will again. I'm just forewarning you. And I just want to get something out of the way before I speak about this story. So, this is the story of a man named Brandon Teena. Brandon Teena was born as a female. However, I'm not going to be referring to Brandon as a female whatsoever, because he wasn't. He was born biologically, he was a female, and to the day he died, biologically, he was still female. He sadly never got to undergo the treatment. I believe he was receiving hormone therapy, but he never officially had the operation. Brandon was male because that's what he identified as. He felt that he was a man, and that's the transition that he wanted to eventually go to. So I don't want to hear anyone referring to Brandon as a female. I want to be respectful. Brandon is a male. That's basically it. So I just wanted to get that bit out of the way. So Brandon Teena was born on December 12th, 1972 in Lincoln, Nebraska. His mother was named Joanne Brandon. His father sadly died in a car accident, I think just a few months before Brandon was born, so he obviously never got to know his father. Brandon also had a sister named Tammy, who was 3 years older than him. So Brandon was born as Teena Marie Brandon, but that's, like I said, that's not what I'm going to be referring to him as. His mother named him as Teena Marie after their German Shepherd dog. So when Brandon was quite young, I'm not too sure, I think it was before he was 3 anyway, so he was little. Him and his sister Tammy actually moved in with their maternal grandmother, and their mother, I believe, reclaimed them when he was 3 and Tammy was 6. I'm not too sure of the circumstances. I don't really know why. I know that their mother was, she was struggling because she was a single mother. She had 2 kids. I can imagine it's very hard out there for single mothers. So I don't know if she was just trying to get herself together, or she was just working so much that she couldn't really take care of them. I don't really know. The details on that aren't very clear. So the family resided in Pine Anchor Mobile Park in northeast Lincoln. Joanne, Brandon and Tammy's mother, received disability checks. I'm not too sure what for. And she worked as a clerk in a women's retail store in order to support the family. it is stated that at a young age, Brandon and Tammy were sexually abused for several years by their uncle, and Brandon actually sought counselling for this in 1991, just 2 years before he was murdered. So at a young age, Brandon felt different, and I use that term loosely. It's a term I don't really like to use because I believe everyone is different. I could be sat next to a girl who looked exactly like me with blue hair, same kind of build, same colour eyes, whatever, and we could be completely different because humans are so complex. Like, we have so many different parts of us and different traits and emotions and that negate who we are. And as much as we may physically look like someone next to us, we could be polar opposites, and you will never find someone that is the exact same as you. You may find a friend that you think, like, you know, is your spirit animal and you think that they are exactly like you, but you will always have at least something that will differ you from that person. Humans are, we are all completely different from one another. So I don't really like to use that term, but he did feel different compared to girls his own age. He rejected traditional female norms. You know, he didn't want to wear dresses and skirts and stuff like that. Neither did I. I hated dresses. I just wanted to wear tracksuits all of the time. My mum hated it. She always wanted, like, she'd pick out these pretty little dresses for me to wear if we went out, if we went to parties and stuff like that. I just point blank refused. I just didn't like anything remotely girly. And Brandon was the same. And he just was described as a tomboy. He wasn't interested in, like I said, traditional girly stuff like playing with dolls and all that kind of stuff, which again, it's like, that's something that really angers me when parents are like upset that their children don't behave in a traditional manner that suits their gender. It's like, I used to work with children and I would often come into contact with dads that would hate their sons playing with dolls, which I just find utterly ridiculous. I really do. So if Carter, like, if we were shopping and he was like, "Mummy, can I have that doll?" I wouldn't be like, "No, here, have a car, have some tools." Like, I'd be like, yeah, well, as long as I had the money, as long as it wasn't overly expensive and, you know, it was within the realms of reason, of course I would get him that doll. Like, looking after a doll and caring for it, I think is great, and I think it's something that should be taught because it's role playing and it kind of like teaches kids about normal life and about how to look after things. And yeah, and that's something that should be embraced, I think. But sadly, Brandon kind of come from where he lived, I think was quite, I don't want to sound offensive, but in this time as well, and the place that he lived in, they were all very ignorant and narrow-minded. So as you can imagine, children were expected to behave and look a certain way, and Brandon just rejected all of that. And especially when he started school as well. So Brandon and his sister attended St. Mary's Elementary School, and I'm gonna butcher this, Pierce X High School, which is just a really weird name. So yeah, he attended both of those schools in Lincoln, and Brandon was known to be socially awkward, which, you know, this guy, he was going through a complete identity crisis, which he shouldn't have been, because he was taught by society and by those closest to him that he should be dressing a certain way, he should look a certain way, he should behave and talk a certain way. Of course he's going to go through this identity crisis, but if he didn't have other people telling him that this is how you should behave, this is how you should look, he wouldn't have been undergoing this identity crisis. He wouldn't have been struggling in school. He wouldn't have been struggling to communicate with others. I don't think he really knew how to communicate with others, and I just really feel for him. Like, especially starting like high school is such a horrible time, because I think naturally you go through a bit of an identity crisis anyway. You're kind of like starting to figure out who you are, because I think before that you're very much influenced by your peers and you start to behave and talk the same way as your friends. And then when you start high school, you start to become more independent and you start to have your own mannerisms and your ways of being and your own interests. And you start to become your own person. So I think where Brandon come from, it was a very religious town, especially within this time as well. So I know that Brandon didn't particularly do very well in school. I think he was a smart kid, but obviously he had his own issues going on. I don't think he was really able to focus. And he ended up getting expelled before he could graduate. He got into a lot of trouble for like disruptive behaviour and all that kind of stuff, and yeah, inevitably got expelled. So I think this kind of got to a point where he didn't really know what to do with his life. I know that he was getting into some trouble with like petty theft and forging bad checks and all that kind of stuff. He was just didn't really know what to do in order to make ends meet. So that's kind of the path that he went down, unfortunately. And before he ended up being expelled, an army recruiter actually visited the high school in order to enlist students in the armed forces. And this interested Brandon quite significantly, and he decided that on his 18th birthday that he was going to enlist. He wanted to join the army. However, he failed the written exam because he put himself down as a male. Because biologically he was female, he ended up failing, which is just stupid. But yeah, so unfortunately he couldn't join the army. So during this time, Brandon started dating. He wanted to get out there and meet different girls, and like he dated quite a few girls. I don't know if all of them knew at some point that he was a transgender male. I know that the girls that he was kind of exclusively in a relationship with, he did end up telling them after a while, but initially when he'd first start dating someone, he wouldn't tell them straight away. So I don't know if he told every single one of them, but yeah, he did. With the girls that he really liked and he could see sort of it going somewhere, he did tell them. And I think from what I know, I think it was an issue initially. I think some girls sort of didn't know sort of how to deal with it, and they were just sort of a bit confused. There was one girl in particular, I think that he actually ended up getting engaged to, called Gina. I think it kind of struck up an issue at first, but she just thought they loved each other, so what else matters? And that's right, really. And everyone that knew Brandon and all the girls that he was in relationships with and that dated had nothing but good things to say about him, and said that he was just the perfect boyfriend. Like, he was so attentive and accommodating and compassionate and caring, and he would just always want to please them and do things for them, and he was just the perfect boyfriend. So in December of 1990, Brandon went to a skate park with his friends, and he would like bandage his breasts down so that obviously he looked like a male. I think to everyone that sort of he would meet, he would say, "My name is Brandon," you know, so I don't think anyone really questioned it. Hi guys, I've just had to pop in and redo a certain bit of this video because my heating come on during the video and it makes a really weird noise when it comes on. It's like a really loud piercing noise, and it's just unavoidable. It was just so loud. You wouldn't have been able to have even got through it, even though this particular bit was only a few minutes. So I've had to redo it. So yeah, I'm just going to carry on with this part of the video. So whilst Brandon was at the skate park, he meets this young girl. I'm not too sure what her name was. They kind of were quite attracted to each other and were getting chatted. I think they kind of went on like a couple of dates, but didn't really go anywhere. And this is when he meets this girl's friend, whose name is Heather. So Brandon and Heather, their connection was instantaneous, and Heather becomes Brandon's first real proper relationship, and they were absolutely head over heels in love with each other. And during this time, Brandon goes on to work at a petrol station because he wants to obviously get some money together so that he could buy a trailer for him and his girlfriend. He saw a future with Heather. He really did have strong feelings for her, and vice versa, and he wanted it to progress. And I think Brandon was like a serial romantic. I think he was kind of an all or nothing kind of guy, and he just wanted real love. And he saw that in Heather, and he could see them going down that path. And obviously Heather didn't know that Brandon biologically was female. I'm not too sure if she ever found out. They were together for about a year. There were a lot of problems in the relationship, I think, with Brandon's petty theft, and Brandon's mother as well also kind of caught wind of the relationship. And there was one particular time where she follows Brandon, and she actually I think she slams him up against the wall. She gets quite aggressive with him and demands to know whether the relationship was platonic or sexual, to which I believe Brandon told her that it wasn't platonic. They were in a relationship and they were fully committed to each other, which did not make his mother happy. She just did not approve of the relationship. I think she had a very hard time accepting that her daughter, who she carried inside her for 9 months, was no longer her daughter. Her daughter was now her son. And as much as it's hard to say how I would be about it. Like, it's quite easy for me to just say, yeah, I'll be totally fine about it. I would be supportive 100% if my son come up to me when he's like 14, 15, whatever age he is, and he says to me, Mum, I don't feel right being a boy. I don't feel like I'm a boy. I feel like inside I'm a girl and I want to be a girl. I think it's hard for parents because you've known your child to be a certain gender all of their life, and it is a huge transition, but you've just got to look past it. And if that's what isn't, like, if your child isn't happy with who they are and they feel like they need to undergo this transition to be who they really are, then you need to be fully supportive of that. You need to put all your personal feelings and demons aside. I understand it must be really hard, but at the end of the day, all we want is for our children to be happy. So whilst Brandon was having like his psychiatric evaluation, the results were that Brandon was suffering from a severe sexual identity crisis. He was later taken to Lancaster County Crisis Centre to ensure that he was not suicidal. He was released from the centre just 3 days later, and he had to have like therapy afterwards to discuss his sexuality during these sessions. And then it was revealed that he had been raped, which I'm presuming was by his uncle when he was younger. The counselling sessions ended just 2 weeks later. Like, that was it. Which again, I'm sure you can see by my title that it says that the system failed him, and it gets worse. So Brandon had like numerous run-ins with the law, just, you know, like minor stuff, like petty crime, like theft and stuff like that, because I don't think he worked for that petrol station for very long, and he didn't really know. I think he had a lot of trouble trying to get a job, so he would just, I think he'd only like, not that this is okay, but I think he would only sort of rob from people that he knew. I don't think he necessarily like broke into people's houses or anything like that, but again, I'm not condoling it because it's not okay. But I think we can all agree that he was obviously going through a lot and he didn't really know what to do. He was struggling. And Brandon decided that he just got to a point in his life where he was in a bit of a rut and he wanted something to change. He no longer wanted to hide from the rest of the world. He wanted to be somewhere where people didn't really know him, they didn't know his previous identity. He could basically start again and start a new life. So he did, and he moved to another town also in Nebraska. Well, this is a town where no one really knew him, and this is when he meets a woman named Lisa Lambert. So he moved to Falls City in Nebraska and he meets Lisa. I think Lisa had a son as well, and shortly after meeting he basically moved in with her, and I think initially the relationship was sort of romantic, but it wasn't really going anywhere, but they just remained good friends and they stayed living together. And this is when Lisa introduces Brandon to her friend, who was 18 years old at the time. Her name was Lana Tisdale. So Brandon and Lana, just sparks flew. They were just absolutely besotted with each other from the get-go. And the relationship was going very, very well. And like, Lana introduced Brandon to all of her friends. Two of her friends who become major components in this story, which are John Lotter and Tom Nissen. So these two guys, I think they were like ex-convicts. I'm not too sure what for. I think they had like pretty hefty criminal records. They weren't particularly the best kind of guys to sort of hang around with. I think Lana only really like hung around in the same social circle because Tom, his sister, was good friends with Lana, and Brandon become quite good friends with these two guys. But unfortunately, Brandon's engagement in petty crime didn't end, and he actually ended up getting arrested. And when he was arrested, obviously because biologically he was female, he was placed in the female part of the prison, well, of the jail cell. And Lana was oblivious to the fact that Brandon was a transgender male. So she paid Brandon's bail, and when she turned up to the police station to come and get Brandon, that's when she knew, that's when she come to realise that Brandon was in the female part, and noticed, and obviously found out that Brandon was female. So when this happened, and I think it was in the local newspaper as well, obviously his real identity was put in the paper, and everyone found out that Brandon was transgender. And people weren't very happy about this. Lana's mother, she wasn't particularly happy. I think she actually confronted Brandon and she was quite aggressive with him. I think she like pushed him into like a cupboard or something like that, and like just had a proper go at him. Obviously all of Lana's friends, Tom and John included, they were not happy about it at all, which I'm sure gives you some kind of indication of what sort of town this was. You know, they obviously wasn't very liberal, very open-minded. They were, you know, just if you're remotely different, they were not okay with it whatsoever. So Brandon just was broken at this point. He didn't know what to do. His previous identity had been revealed to this place where he wanted to start a new life. He didn't want people to know about this. He just wanted people to know him for who he is, and that is Brandon, a male. Lana decided to continue with the relationship. I think obviously she wasn't happy at first that he had lied to her. I think that was the main issue. It's just that they had been together and she didn't really know who he was. So Tom's sister actually warned Brandon and said, look, you're gonna have to leave. You need to leave town. And Brandon was considering it. He wanted to leave, but unfortunately he never got the chance. And on Christmas Eve in 1993, Brandon attended a party with Lana and all of her friends, Tom and John included. And John and Tom took Brandon into a bathroom where they pulled his trousers down and pulled his pants down and revealed his private parts to everyone to prove that he was female. I don't know why, they just wanted to prove it to everyone. And so after that they let him go. He continued with the party, he stayed, which I don't really understand that, but look, I'm not judging. We shouldn't judge that at all. We weren't in Brandon's head. We weren't in his shoes. We can't say why he was thinking that. So yeah, let's not pass judgment on that at all, please. So yeah, he continued with the party and I think he stayed for the night, and then the next morning, I think like early hours in the morning, Tom and John, there's a lot of details with this, but I don't really want to go into too much because it's just not very nice, but I'll just give you the main facts. So Tom and John basically coerce Brandon into their car, into the back seat, where they proceed to beat the shit out of him. And Tom and John sort of say to him like, this can either go one way or the other, but either way you're going to get raped. And they take turns raping him and beating him. And they say to Brandon basically to keep his mouth shut, otherwise they will kill him. So then Brandon goes to Lana's home and tells Lana exactly what happened. Lana says to him, you need to go to the police, you need to tell them exactly what happened. Brandon was very sceptical, he didn't want to, but I think he knew it was the right thing to do, and probably because he didn't want this happening to someone else, which I'm guessing it probably has. So he did go to the police, however, which this just f***s me off beyond belief. The police officer who was questioning Brandon just seemed to be more interested in the fact that Brandon was transgender rather than the actual crime that these awful men had committed. He was asking such inappropriate and unnecessary questions about the fact that Brandon was actually female, which is just so disgusting. And a rape kit was done and a report was filed, but it just didn't go anywhere. And 3 days later, John and Tom learned of this report. So they were not happy. And they basically, they sought revenge. They wanted to go after Teena. They wanted to go after Brandon and silence him forever. And that's exactly what they did. So on December the 31st, 1993, Tom and John go to Lisa Lambert's home. Lisa is in bed, trying to go to sleep. And the two men basically are screaming, shouting at her. They are furious and they are asking where Brandon is, and she refuses to tell them. So they end up searching the home. They search the home and, oh sorry, just before, they ask Lisa if anyone else is in the home, and a man named Philip Devine, who was dating, I think, Lana Tisdale's sister, he was also in the home, so Lisa told him that. So they went after Brandon and found him under his own bed, and they shot him dead. They then continued to shoot Lisa and Philip, both of them dead, in front of Lisa Lambert's toddler. So the two men noticed that Brandon is still twitching. So one of them asks the other for a knife, and they stab him in the chest until he's dead. Until they're sure that he is dead. So sadly, 3 people lost their lives that night in front of a toddler. Which is just the most horrific thing. That night, a toddler lost his mother forever. For no reason. Brandon lost his life for no reason. Philip lost his life for no reason. If those 2 men didn't commit such a disgusting crime, they wouldn't need to go after Brandon for revenge. They shouldn't have done it in the first place. It is just baffling. It is the worst, one of the worst crimes I've ever come across. I just find it just so upsetting. And the fact that the police did all as well. If they actually properly took that report seriously and locked him up, that would have never have happened. But instead, that police officer was just too interested in the fact that Brandon was transgender. Like, why does that matter? Who the fuck cares? He is a male. He was a male. He was a beautiful, loving person. And that's all there is to it. And something horrific happened to him, and that should have been taken seriously. He cried for help so many times, and he was let down again and again. This is what I mean. The system failed him. The people around him failed him. He was a beautiful person, and he deserved more. He deserved... I'm gonna cry. He deserved to stay in this world. He did not deserve this. There was no reason for it. And it just breaks my heart. It really does. Like, I just don't understand why things like this happen. There are so many hurt crimes. There are so many hate crimes that are committed because people, I don't know, they feel threatened, or they just feel hate towards someone because they feel that they're different to them. Like, what reason? Why? Like, I just can't fathom it whatsoever. Those 2 men are just the worst of the worst. And Brandon just deserved more. He did not deserve that. He led such a troubled life, and he struggled so much, and his mother never even fully accepted him. When Brandon died, his headstone said, a daughter, sister and friend. She never accepted the fact that Brandon was a male. And she should have done. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to go after her, because I'm sure she is just was distraught and still is from this happening. And it is horrific. But his whole life was just a roller coaster of negative emotions. So after Tom and John left, I think just a few days later, they were arrested and charged with the murder of all 3 of them. So when it went to trial, they basically, John and Tom just went against each other. They were just accusing the other of committing the crime, and that they were just there and had no part in it. I think Tom particularly just didn't take any blame, and just, well, didn't take any responsibility for it. He just blamed everything on John and vice versa. So John was found guilty of murder, obviously on 3 counts, and he was sentenced to the death penalty. And because Tom testified against John, he was just sentenced to life in prison. They both appealed their convictions in 2007, which were denied, which rightly so. So this concludes this week's case. I think that we can all learn a lesson from Brandon's story. A lesson that teaches us all to be kind. You never know the inner demons that someone is struggling with, and it's always detrimental to just be mindful of other people, of what they're going through. Be mindful of what you're saying to them. If what you want to say to someone isn't necessarily kind and you know that someone's going to take it the wrong way, or it's something that's a sensitive or a subject that they'll take offensively, don't say it. Just think a little bit harder about what you're going to say and what you want to say. And we all need to be open to education of all sorts. It's just an incredibly sad story. There is just no excuse for raping and murdering someone because you feel that that person is different. It's just the lowest of the low. No one is born racist, sexist, homophobic, ageist. We just need to teach acceptance. We need to stop allowing others to be ignorant. We need to stop passing it off and just being like, oh, you know, it's just the way that John is. He's just always been like that. Or, oh, it's just their generation. No, we need to stop accepting it. It's not okay. There is nothing wrong with taking that person aside. You hear him say, I don't know, an offensive comment that someone from a particular group would find very personally offensive. Just take them aside and say, like, look, you can't really say that, and just educate them. Because for me, it's like I said earlier, like, I'm not 100% familiar with all of the terminology regarding the LGBTQ community. And that's something I want to change. I need to be more familiar. We all do. And if someone, like, after watching this video, if someone says to me, look, you shouldn't really have said that, that's just a little bit offensive, what you should say is, and then that. And I would not take offence to that, because the last thing I want is to offend someone or seem ignorant or disrespectful. I am always up for learning more. I love learning. I love education. So if someone like wanted to educate me on a certain topic, I'm all up for that. I would not take offence to it. I would not find it condescending. And that's the thing as well, when I say that we need to educate people, we don't need to be condescending or patronising or reductive. We just need to approach it in a sensitive manner and just say to them that what they have said is quite offensive, and tell them that, maybe suggest what they could say instead. Or if they just have a certain belief that you just find to be completely narrow-minded, show them maybe some case studies, some websites, some books that completely conflict with what that person is saying. And it might make them think differently. It may make a difference, and all we've got to do is try. Our society is becoming more accepting, and that is great, but we can do better, and we should. No person should ever feel like they need to hide their true identity from the rest of the world. If someone's undergoing a transition into a gender that is biologically different to their own, that should be embraced and accepted. Making a transition, such a huge transition, in order to make themselves happy and feel right, is not something to be judged. We see it all the time with celebrities and influencers all over Instagram promoting self-care, saying stuff like, oh, light a candle, get in a relaxing bath, like, make yourself happy. Yeah, that's great, and obviously those kind of things, they do make you happy, and they can chill you out and make you feel relaxed. But sometimes for some people, it's a hell of a lot more complex than that. And to undergo such a huge transition to be happy, that is something that should 100% be embraced, and it should not be judged whatsoever. So don't ever feel like you can't make a difference, because you can. It's like, I hear people say all the time, oh, how can I really make a difference? How can I do that? There's not really much I can do. I'm just one person. Yeah, okay, you are. But if you raise awareness in some kind of way, you're reaching out to people, and then that person may be inspired by you, and then they may want to do something, or they may speak to someone, and then they'll speak to someone, and it has a knock-on effect. So don't think that just because you're one person, you cannot do enough. I want to do a hell of a lot more. As much as I love doing these videos, and I love to raise awareness, and I feel like every single one of my cases teaches a lesson to be learned in one way or another, I want to do more. I want to raise awareness in a variation of ways. And I love that you guys watch my videos. I love that you are interested in what I'm talking about and you do seem to be genuinely interested in these victims as well, which is just amazing. You're not just watching it for the sake of watching it. You are touched by these people and their stories. But particular stories like this that have such a huge message within them, we need to do more about that, and we can. So upon doing my research, I've come across a multitude of charities and certain petitions that you can sign as well to get these stories out there, to make a change. You can petition to change your country's school curriculum so that it teaches more diverse subjects. You can do something as simple as just being at home and just speaking to your children and teaching them about people from other communities and other races and other ethnicities. You can teach them about diversity and about that being different is normal. It's as simple as that. It's like my son, I have so many books for him that I know he's only one, but you've got to start somewhere. So he has so many books about, not just about feminism, but just about equality in general. And that's just something that I've always wanted to drum into him at an early age, because I want him to know that everyone's different, but we're all equal. You're not superior to someone because of your race or your age or your sex at all. And I want him to know that. I'm going to list some charities and petitions which will help support others from all types of communities. We need to work together and we need to make a difference. I'm going to stop ranting now. I think you guys have heard me ramble on for far too long. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day and watching this video. I hope you've took something from this story. I know it's a very sensitive and triggering subject. It is for me. I don't know what, it's just something that really hit home for me, and it's one that it's just so disturbing and really upsetting, and I think it's because it's something that is still very prevalent. Thank you for watching my video. Thank you for your continued support. Your support and your interaction means more to me than you'll ever know. So I will see you guys on the flip side. I will be back next week for another episode of Toxic Crime Tuesdays. So stay safe, stay spooky. Bye guys.